I just got a promotion today, and I simply have to put this out there. I love my job. I love my job so much. I thought I would never feel so satisfied, so fulfilled in my entire life, but here it is! This feeling that only this very profession can give me. I'm a bit of a workaholic, but ever since I landed this job, ever since I started to get into my field, everything around me just faded into boredom. This has become the only thing that matters. Of course, there are some downsides to being so in love with a workplace. My partner of 3 years broke up with me when I became too invested, but I didn't really care, if I'm being honest. Things had begun to get so boring around him anyways. There was nothing exciting about our relationship anymore, and I was actually glad it was over. More time for me to work. The pay's pretty good as well, by the way. Could be better, but, you know. There's always room for improvement. Always. When I received my first order from the higher-ups, I had been hesitant. Very hesitant. The task was clear enough, sure, but I had some reservations. But my boss was extremely supportive. When he saw how hesitant I was, he came up to me, put a hand on my shoulder, and squeezed it gently. He then took out his gun, his very own gun, from its holster and put it into my open hand. I closed my fingers around it and looked up at him. He smiled. "A bit worried, huh?" he asked in a soft voice. I nodded with shameful eyes. That's okay, you know. It's perfectly understandable. It's just natural, you know. But after you've done it once, after you've gotten it over with for the first time, I promise you won't ever be worried again. You'll enjoy it even. You just need to, you know, force yourself. But after you've stopped running away from it, it'll all be fine, just peachy. So don't be scared, okay, friend? First time's always the hardest, and practice matters. He let me use his own personal weapon. I felt all the responsibility, obligation, and courage he probably felt every time he had held it. As I stood on the rooftop that night and lifted the gun to point it at the man walking down in the street beneath me, it felt hard, icy, and heavy. My fingers shook when I pulled the trigger. I wasted no time. As soon as the first shot was fired, I added 2 more bullets, one of which pierced his heart. Silver. Lycans are persistent, hard-to-kill fellas, but a silver bullet in the chest always works. Something I would learn later on. I climbed down from the roof, and as I approached the still twitching body of the creature, I noticed that it had started to turn. Its face had gotten very hairy all of a sudden, and there was already thick fur covering its lower arms. When you shoot a lichen, they won't just drop dead on the spot. They'll stay alive long enough for you to look them in the eyes and enjoy the feeling of victory. This particular one had killed 12 people. It had never tried to restrain itself. This is part of our business's motto, by the way. We help if things get out of control. So I stood over the body of the lichen, my very first mission completed, and I looked it in the eyes. Yellow, hateful things. It stared up at me as if it was wanting to rip my throat out. It probably did, but doing stuff like that is kind of hard when you're about to die. I stared back at it, this sweet feeling of success creeping up inside me. The day after that, I would go out to buy my boss a few drinks to thank him. He always went to drink on the first successful missions of new personnel. I gotta say, most people fail on their first order. Hell, I failed on my first order. But you? He paused to take a big sip of whiskey. You got it in you. You're gonna make it far, kid. Believe me, not too long from now and you'll be sipping drinks with your own subordinates. Hearing this gave me the confidence that I needed. It filled me with the warmth and joy and pride and eagerness. I hardly could wait for my next mission. Of course, there were better and worse days at work. One time I got to take on a nasty spider lady. Now, spiders terrify me. So when this giant thing came crawling out towards me, fangs clicking, I thought I wouldn't make it out of the cave alive. But I did. See, sometimes the most logical solution is the best one. There doesn't always have to be magic or fancy bullets made of silver. In this case, it was insecticide. It was as simple as that. Of course, I had to lace it with some stronger stuff to make it work better, but in the end, my little plan was coming together perfectly. Even though spiders aren't technically insects, they still don't like insecticide. Especially not laced, flammable insecticide. I grilled that spider lady, burned her to a crisp. Her and her 3,000 children. I almost felt a bit sorry for wiping out an entire family of God knows how many. But then again, if you didn't want me to kill your spider kids, you shouldn't have eaten all those human kids. The worst ones are the humanoids, though. Not because they're necessarily the strongest or most aggressive, but because it's so much harder to destroy them. They take the shape of a person, an innocent-looking, soft, squishy pink human. They build up their lives in our society, most of the time with no one ever noticing that they aren't what they pretend to be. They keep their dirty business behind closed doors. I mean, who looks into every person's freezer? How do you know they don't store corpses in there? Your neighbor could be a vampire and you wouldn't even know it. Because they don't glitter. They don't do that. That vampire talk kind of reminds me of Jeremy. Jeremy wasn't a vampire, but he was a revenant. Jeremy had a wife and a kid, adopted, of course. I don't know what he told his wife in regards of why he couldn't reproduce, but it was definitely a lie. She didn't know she had married a walking corpse. Poor girl. I felt so sorry for her. I felt sorry when I had to kill Jeremy. Kill is probably the wrong term, though. Unkill? Who cares? I still remember how this kid was crying and how his wife screamed. I think the worst part for the two of them was to see him turn. Right before he fell asleep for good, his body began taking its natural shape. No shape, that is. It became a silhouette, a mere shadow, and then it vanished. I drank myself to sleep that night. That had been one of the worst days. But hey, you always need to remember the good times. Lichens, giant spiders, fairies, hybrids, and aliens, those are all the most satisfying things to kill. Yes, aliens as well. What, are you shocked? Oh, come on. We all know we're not the only ones in the universe. In fact, there have been multiple attempts by other species to reach out to us. Why you've never heard of any proven alien encounters? Why there is no evidence? Because me and my colleagues are so good at what we do. Let's face it, you would all be pretty screwed without us. People like me have always been around, even though no one ever notices. We are here to protect you. We shelter you, eliminate the things that go bump in the night so you can focus on your life without being paranoid. As long as we're around, you don't have to be scared. We're here for you. Why? Because it's great to protect people, to know you're doing something good, but also because it feels so awesome to kill monsters. Now that this post is nearing its end, you'll soon click off and probably start reading another creepy story. Who knows what it'll be about? People on here are pretty creative. But if it should frighten you, know that you don't have to be scared, because somewhere nearby is a person like me, ready to jump to your rescue if need be. And in the unlikely case that they'll be too late, they won't hesitate to avenge you. None of us are lazy. We love our job.